Why does the princess look sad? Daddy? The little girl asked. Then what the single dad did changed everything. Jake Morrison sat at his usual corner table at the Corner Cup Cafe in downtown Austin on a Saturday morning in mid-March with his 8-year-old daughter Lily, coloring her way through her third princess coloring book of the month. This was their tradition. Every Saturday at 10 in the morning, they'd come here for hot chocolate and donuts, and 2 hours of just being together before the rest of the weekend got busy with laundry and groceries and all the stuff that came with being a single dad. Jake was pretending to check work emails on his phone, but really he was just watching Lily color Belle's dress yellow and thinking about how his daughter looked more like her mom every single day. It had been 4 years since his wife Sarah died, but some mornings the missing her still hit him like a punch to the chest. The way Lily tilted her head when she concentrated, the way she bit her bottom lip when she was trying to stay inside the lines, the way she hummed without realizing it, the same melody Sarah used to hum while cooking dinner. These small echoes of the woman he'd lost made his heart ache and swell at the same time. The cafe smelled like fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls. The hiss and steam of the espresso machine provided a comfortable backdrop to the Saturday morning crowd. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, catching dust motes in the air and warming the worn wooden table where they sat. This place had become their sanctuary, a neutral ground where grief didn't feel quite so heavy, where Jake could pretend for 2 hours that he had everything under control. He didn't, of course. Nobody who'd lost their wife at 30 and been left to raise a 4-year-old alone had everything under control. But Jake had learned to fake it well enough. He'd learned to braid hair by watching YouTube videos at 2 in the morning. He'd learned to pack lunches that other kids wouldn't mock. He'd learned to be both mother and father, even though he knew he was failing at least half of that equation most days. Lily looked up from her coloring book, her blonde hair falling across her face. She had Sarah's hair. Sarah's blue eyes, Sarah's nose. Sometimes Jake couldn't look at her without seeing his dead wife staring back at him, and the guilt of that observation made him hate himself a little more each time. The bell above the cafe door chimed. Jake didn't look up. People came and went all morning at the Corner Cup. Mrs. Patterson with her tiny dog and an even tinier purse, college students with laptops and oversized headphones, contractors grabbing coffee before heading to job sites. The rhythm of the place was as familiar as his own heartbeat, but Lily's head snapped up so fast Jake thought she might get whiplash. Her blue eyes went wide with the kind of wonder usually reserved for actual magic. She grabbed his arm hard enough to leave marks, her fingers digging into the flannel of his work shirt. Her whisper came out breathless, reverent. "Daddy, look. A real princess just walked in." Jake looked up expecting to see maybe someone in a costume or something. Austin was weird like that. You never knew when you'd run into someone dressed as a superhero or a historical figure just because it was Tuesday. But what he saw was just a woman in a beautiful floral sundress with her dark hair pulled back and heels that clicked on the tile floor. She looked put together and professional and yeah, okay, she was really pretty, but definitely not an actual princess. He kept his voice gentle. "That's just a nice lady, sweetheart. Not a princess." But Lily shook her head with absolute certainty that only an 8-year-old could possess. "No, Daddy. She looks exactly like Belle from my movie. She even has the same hair and everything. She's definitely a princess." The woman ordered her coffee at the counter. Jake watched her without meaning to. There was something about the way she held herself, shoulders back, chin up. The posture of someone who'd learned to appear confident even when she wasn't. He recognized it because he wore the same mask every single day. She took her coffee from the barista and walked to a table in the opposite corner. That's when Jake noticed that this supposed princess was crying. Not loud, dramatic crying, but the quiet kind where you're trying really hard to hold it together in public and failing. She kept wiping her eyes and looking at her phone and then crying harder. Each swipe of her hand across her cheek looked like it took more effort than the last. Emma noticed too, because his daughter noticed everything. She tugged on Jake's sleeve with increasing urgency. "Daddy, why does the princess look sad? Princesses are supposed to smile and be happy like in the movies." Jake felt his chest tighten. He'd spent 4 years trying to teach his daughter that sadness was okay, that missing people was normal, that you didn't have to smile all the time just because other people expected it. And here she was confronting that reality in a stranger's tears. "Sometimes people just have bad days, honey. It's okay to be sad sometimes." Lily looked at him with those big eyes that were exactly like her mother's. "But you always tell me that when someone's sad, we should try to help them. That's what Mommy would want us to do." Remember, Jake did remember. He'd been saying that exact thing since Lily was 4 years old and asking why Mommy wasn't coming home from the hospital. He'd said it at Sarah's funeral when Lily asked why everyone was crying. He'd said it when Lily's best friend moved away last year. He'd said it so many times it had become their family motto. When someone's hurting you, show up. You help. You don't look away. And now his own words were coming back to bite him, because his 8-year-old daughter was absolutely right. He should go check on the crying woman. That's what Sarah would have done. Sarah who'd stopped to help strangers change flat tires. Sarah who'd bought groceries for homeless people. Sarah who'd once spent 2 hours in the rain helping a lost dog find its owner. Sarah who'd been so much braver than Jake could ever hope to be. Before Jake could figure out what to say, the woman dropped her phone. It clattered across the floor, sliding across tile and spinning until it stopped right under Jake's table. The sound cut through the ambient coffee shop noise like a gunshot. Several people looked up. The woman's face flushed red as she started to stand. Jake bent down and picked up the phone. He couldn't help seeing the lock screen. A photo of her in a wedding dress standing next to a man who looked like he stepped out of a catalog. Both of them smiling. Both of them looking like they had everything figured out. And beneath the photo text that read Derek and Natalie with a date from 4 months ago. November 15th. Jake's brain did the math automatically. 4 months since what should have been her wedding day. 4 months since something had clearly gone very wrong. He walked over to her table phone in hand. "You dropped this." The woman looked up with mascara streaked down her face. Her green eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted. "Oh my God, thank you. I'm so sorry. I'm a complete mess right now. You probably think I'm crazy sitting here crying in public." Jake opened his mouth to respond with something reassuring. Something about how everyone has bad days. Something neutral and safe that would let him retreat back to his daughter and his coloring books and his carefully controlled Saturday morning routine. But then Lily appeared right next to him because apparently his daughter had decided this was happening whether he was ready or not. She looked up at the crying woman with zero filter and more compassion than most adults managed in a lifetime. "Are you okay, princess? You look really sad. Did something bad happen?" The woman looked surprised, then she actually laughed a little bit through her tears. The sound was broken but genuine. "Princess, that's very sweet. I'm Natalie, and yeah, something kind of bad happened, but it was a while ago. I'm just having a hard morning." Lily nodded like she understood completely. "You look like Belle from Beauty and the Beast. That's why you're a princess. But Belle smiles a lot and you're crying. Did your prince turn into a beast or something?" Jake wanted to disappear into the floor. He wanted to apologize profusely and drag his daughter back to their table and pretend this entire interaction had never happened. But Natalie laughed again, this time for real. A laugh that reached her eyes and made something in Jake's chest twist uncomfortably. "You know what? That's actually pretty accurate. My prince turned out to not be much of a prince at all." Jake finally found his voice. "I'm Jake. This is Lily. I'm really sorry. She's extremely direct and apparently we're bothering you during your Saturday morning breakdown." Natalie shook her head hard enough that her dark hair slipped from behind her ear. "No. Please don't apologize. Adults spend so much energy pretending not to notice when someone's falling apart. It's actually really refreshing to have someone just ask. She looked down at Lily with something like gratitude in her eyes. Do you guys want to sit down for a minute? I could probably use the company, honestly. Lily was already climbing into the chair across from Natalie before Jake could say yes or no. His daughter had apparently appointed herself as the director of this entire interaction. Jake had no choice but to follow, settling into the chair next to Lily, and trying not to think about how this was the first time in 4 years he'd sat down with a woman who wasn't his sister or a co-worker. They sat there for the next hour and a half, which was way longer than Jake had planned. Natalie told them the age-appropriate version of her story, how she was supposed to get married 4 months ago, how the man had changed his mind at the last possible second. She didn't say the words left at the altar in front of Lily, but Jake could read between the lines. He could see it in the way her hands shook when she talked about that day, in the way her voice went flat when she mentioned his name. Derek, the prince who'd turned into something much worse than a beast. Lily was absolutely outraged. He left you at the wedding. That's so mean. You're really pretty and nice. He must be really dumb. Natalie laughed again, and this time there were fresh tears in her eyes, but these looked different. Less like grief, and more like relief. Thank you, sweetheart. That's very sweet of you to say. She explained that she'd moved to Austin from Dallas 3 weeks ago to start over. That this morning she'd been looking at old photos and feeling sorry for herself. That she'd come to the cafe to at least be sad in public instead of alone in her apartment. Jake understood that logic. He'd spent the first year after Sarah's death finding excuses to be around people. Grocery shopping at peak hours, working overtime at construction sites. Anything to avoid the crushing silence of an empty house. Austin's a good city for fresh starts. I've lived here my whole life. Natalie looked at him with genuine curiosity. What do you do? I'm a construction site supervisor for Oak Ridge Construction. We do commercial buildings mostly. Jake wasn't ashamed of his work. He was good at what he did. He could read blueprints like other people read novels. He could spot a structural problem from 50 feet away. He could manage a crew of 30 men and keep a project on schedule and under budget. But sitting across from this woman in her elegant sundress who'd been about to marry an investment banker, Jake suddenly felt acutely aware of the gap between their worlds. His calloused hands, his flannel shirt that had seen better days, the dirt under his fingernails that never quite came clean no matter how hard he scrubbed. Natalie's entire face changed. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened slightly. She put her hand over her mouth and started laughing. Not cruel laughter, not mocking, but genuine, surprised delight. Wait, Jake Morrison. You're Jake Morrison from Oak Ridge. Jake felt confusion wash over him. Yeah, how did you know that? Natalie's laugh got louder. People at other tables looked over. I'm your new occupational health nurse. I start on Monday. I'm supposed to do safety checks and handle on-site injuries. We're literally going to be working together. They both just sat there staring at each other, while Lily bounced in her seat with barely contained excitement. This is like when the princess meets the prince in the village before the ball and they don't know they're going to see each other again. Jake couldn't argue with that assessment. His 8-year-old daughter had just summed up the situation with more accuracy than he could manage. The odds of this happening. Of finding his company's new nurse crying in the same coffee shop he'd been coming to every Saturday for 3 years. Of his daughter deciding to intervene. Of all the ways this morning could have gone, this particular combination of events felt impossible. Felt like something out of one of Lily's fairy tale books. Small world. Guess I'll see you Monday then. Natalie's smile was the first real smile Jake had seen from her all morning. I guess you will. This is either going to be really convenient or really awkward. Let's go with convenient. And hey, if you need anything while you're settling into Austin restaurant recommendations or directions or whatever, I can give you my number. You know, for work stuff. He could feel his face getting hot as he said it. Could hear how awkward it sounded. But Natalie's smile only got wider, more genuine. Something in her eyes shifted from guarded to open. I'd actually really like that. I don't know anyone here yet, and it's been kind of lonely. Lily, who had apparently appointed herself as the director of everyone's social life, jumped in before Jake could respond. You should come to the park with us tomorrow. We go every Sunday and feed the ducks. You can meet our friends, and Daddy knows where all the good swings are. Jake felt his stomach drop. Lily, don't pressure people into hanging out with us. But Natalie was already nodding. Actually, that sounds really nice, if you don't mind me crashing your Sunday tradition. Jake met her eyes and saw something there that made his chest ache. Loneliness, the same brand he carried around every single day. The kind that came from starting over in a place where nobody knew your story, where you had to build everything from scratch. We definitely don't mind. Bring coffee and we'll bring the good snacks. Lily's very particular about what qualifies as duck-feeding appropriate bread. They exchanged numbers. Jake typed hers into his phone with fingers that felt clumsy and too big. Natalie's name appeared in his contacts list. A new name, a new possibility, something that terrified and excited him in equal measure. Natalie left about 20 minutes later. She walked toward the door with her coffee cup and her purse, but she looked different than when she'd arrived. Her shoulders were back, her chin was up. She turned before leaving and waved at Lily. Thank you for checking on the sad princess. You made my morning so much better. Lily waved back enthusiastically. See you tomorrow? The second Natalie was out the door, Lily turned to Jake with the biggest smile on her face. Daddy, you really like the princess. I can tell. You were smiling at her the same way you smile at Mommy in those old videos. Jake felt his face get hot. She's nice, and we're being friendly because she's new in town and she's going to work with me. That's all. Lily gave him this look that was way too knowing for an 8-year-old. You're going to marry her someday. I just know it. Jake laughed despite himself. Slow down, kiddo. We literally just met her. But he couldn't stop thinking about Natalie's smile, about the way she'd laughed at Lily's princess comment, about how she'd opened up to complete strangers in a coffee shop because his daughter had been brave enough to ask if she was okay. About how for the first time in 4 years, Jake had felt something other than grief when looking at a woman. That night, Jake put Lily to bed like he did every night. He read her 2 chapters from her current favorite book. He tucked her in with Mr. Whiskers, the stuffed cat she'd had since she was 2. He was halfway out the door when her small voice stopped him. Daddy, do you think the princess will really come tomorrow? Jake leaned against the doorframe. I think so, sweetheart. She seemed excited about it. Good. Because I think she's lonely like you're lonely, and I think maybe if you're both lonely together, you'll be less lonely. Does that make sense? Jake's throat tightened. His daughter was 8 years old, and she'd just articulated something he'd been unable to put into words for years. Yeah, baby. That makes perfect sense. Do you think Mommy would like her? The question hit Jake like a physical blow. He walked back to Lily's bed and sat down on the edge. What do you think Lily considered this seriously? I think Mommy would be happy that we helped someone who was sad. That's what Mommy always did. Right, she helped people. That's exactly right. Mommy was the best at helping people. Then I think Mommy would really like the princess. And I think Mommy would want you to have a friend. Jake had to turn away so Lily wouldn't see the tears in his eyes. You're really wise, you know that. You tell me that all the time, Daddy, because it's true. Jake kissed her forehead and turned off the light. He stood in the hallway for a long moment, listening to Lily's breathing even out as she fell asleep. His daughter had just given him permission to move forward, permission he didn't know he needed, permission he wasn't sure he deserved. He walked downstairs to the living room where Sarah's picture still sat on the mantel, the same picture that had been there for 4 years. Sarah laughing at the camera, her blonde hair catching the sunlight, her blue eyes bright with joy. This photo had been taken at Zilker Park on a Sunday morning, the same park where he'd promised to take Natalie tomorrow. The coincidence felt significant in a way Jake couldn't quite name. He picked up the frame and studied Sarah's face. I met someone today. Well, Lily met someone and dragged me into it. She's lonely and hurting, and Lily called her a sad princess. I don't know what I'm doing, Sarah. I don't know if I'm ready for this, but Lily seems to think it's okay. She seems to think you'd approve. The picture didn't answer. Pictures never did. But Jake felt something shift in his chest. Something that had been locked tight for 4 years, loosening just enough to let in a sliver of light. Not enough to blind him. Not enough to make him forget. Just enough to remind him that he was still alive. Still breathing. Still capable of feeling something other than grief. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of perfect Austin spring weather that made people forget about the brutal summers to come. Jake and Lily arrived at Zilker Park at 10:45. They spread out their usual blanket under their usual tree. Lily had packed the special bread she'd researched extensively to make sure it was healthy for ducks. Jake had brought the good snacks, which in Lily's world meant goldfish crackers and apple slices, and the fancy cookies from the bakery section of Whole Foods. They waited. Jake checked his phone 17 times in 15 minutes. Each time he did, Lily gave him a knowing look that made him want to throw his phone into Lady Bird Lake. At 10:58, he started to prepare himself for disappointment. Started to plan what he'd say to Lily when Natalie didn't show up. How he'd explain that adults sometimes make plans they don't keep. How that was okay, and it didn't mean anything was wrong with them. At 11 o'clock exactly, a car pulled into the parking lot. Jake recognized Natalie immediately, even from a distance. She got out carrying 2 iced coffees and looking nervous in jeans and a t-shirt that made her look younger and more relaxed than the crying woman from the cafe or the professional nurse from the work site he'd imagined. Lily spotted her and took off running. "The princess came, Daddy." She actually came. Natalie laughed and caught Lily in a hug that looked natural and easy. "Of course I came. I promised, didn't I? And princesses always keep their promises." Jake felt something warm spread through his chest. She'd shown up. This woman who owed them nothing, who could have easily backed out, who probably had a million better things to do on a Sunday morning than hang out with a widower and his daughter. She'd shown up. They spent 3 hours at that park. Jake couldn't remember the last time he'd had this much fun just existing. They fed the ducks with bread that Lily explained extensively was much healthier than regular bread and wouldn't hurt their digestion. They pushed Lily on the swings until she was laughing so hard she couldn't breathe. They walked the trails around the lake while Lily ran ahead exploring everything with the boundless energy of a 9-year-old. Natalie told them more about growing up in Dallas with 2 older brothers who used to put frogs in her backpack, about how she'd always wanted to be a nurse because her grandmother had been one, about watching her grandmother work with such competence and compassion and knowing from age 10 that's what she wanted to do with her life. Jake told her about Sarah dying 4 years ago from complications after childbirth, about how the doctors had said it was rare, about how rare didn't matter when you were the one watching your wife slip away, about how Lily had saved his life by giving him a reason to get up every single morning, when all he wanted to do was stay in bed and pretend the world didn't exist. Natalie's eyes got wet when he talked about Sarah. She didn't offer platitudes, didn't say Sarah was in a better place, or that everything happened for a reason, or any of the other meaningless phrases people had thrown at him for 4 years. She just said, "She's incredible. You've done an amazing job with her." The words hit Jake harder than any condolence ever had, because they acknowledged what he'd done, the work he'd put in, the nights he'd stayed up with a sick kid while working 12-hour days, the school plays and parent-teacher conferences and birthday parties he'd handled alone, the way he'd learned to be enough even when he felt like he was constantly failing. They sat on the blanket while Lily played on the playground equipment with some kids she'd befriended within minutes of arriving. Natalie sipped her coffee and looked out at the lake. "I'm not sure I'd be that strong if I lost someone I loved." Jake shook his head. "You don't know what you're capable of until you have to be. You are strong enough to leave your entire life behind and start over in a new city. That takes more courage than most people ever manage." Natalie looked at him with something like surprise. "I guess I never thought of it that way. Mostly it felt like running away. Sometimes running away is the bravest thing you can do. Sometimes staying in a place that's killing you is the real cowardice. They sat in comfortable silence watching Lily play. The sun was warm on Jake's face, the sound of children laughing mixed with the calls of ducks and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. For the first time in 4 years, Jake felt something approaching peace, not the crushing weight of responsibility, not the constant ache of loss. Just this moment, this sunshine, this woman next to him who understood loneliness in a way most people didn't. When they finally packed up to leave, Lily was practically glowing with happiness. "Can we do this again next Sunday?" "Please." Natalie looked at Jake, waiting for his answer. Jake found himself nodding before he'd fully thought it through. "Yeah, I think we can make that a tradition." Natalie's smile was bright and genuine. "I'd really like that. This was the best day I've had since moving here." They walked to the parking lot together. Lily ran ahead chasing a butterfly and narrating an elaborate story about fairy kingdoms. Jake and Natalie walked slowly, neither seeming in a hurry to end the day. "See you tomorrow at work," Jake nodded. 7:30, I'll give you the full tour. Introduce you to the guys. They're going to love you, or they're going to think I'm too uptight about safety regulations. Nah, they're good guys. They've been asking when we'd finally hire a real nurse instead of just having me hand out Band-Aids and tell them to walk it off. Natalie laughed. Is that your usual medical advice? Walk it off, pretty much. I'm really more of a structural engineer than a medical professional. Well, good thing I'm starting tomorrow then. Good thing. They stood by Natalie's car for a moment too long, the kind of pause that felt pregnant with possibility, with things unsaid, with the awareness that something was shifting between them, something neither of them had asked for, but both of them seemed to want. Thank you for today, for letting me crash your Sunday tradition, for being so welcoming to a stranger who showed up crying in your coffee shop. You're not a stranger anymore, and you're welcome any time. We mean that. Natalie's eyes held his for a beat longer than necessary. I know you do. That's what makes it special. She got in her car and drove away. Jake watched her taillights disappear around the corner. Lily appeared next to him, slipping her small hand into his larger one. You really like her daddy. It wasn't a question. Jake didn't bother denying it. Yeah, kiddo, I really do. Good. Because I think she really likes you too. And I think this is going to be a really good thing. Jake squeezed his daughter's hand. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You're just finally noticing. They drove home with the windows down and the radio playing. Lily sang along to songs she didn't know all the words to. Jake thought about Natalie's smile, about the way she'd listened when he talked about Sarah without judgment or discomfort, about how she'd played with Lily like they'd known each other for years instead of a day, about how for the first time since Sarah died, the future felt like something other than an obligation to survive. Monday morning came faster than Jake expected. He showed up at the construction site at 7 o'clock like always. The morning air still had that cool bite that would burn off by 10. The site was already buzzing with activity. Concrete mixers turning. The beep of backup alarms. The voices of his crew calling to each other across the job site. This was Jake's world. A world of steel and concrete, of measurements and load-bearing walls, of problems that had clear solutions if you just looked hard enough. At 7:30 a car pulled up and Natalie got out wearing scrubs and work boots and her hair in a ponytail. She looked completely different from the crying woman in the sundress, different from the relaxed woman in jeans at the park. This version of Natalie was all business. Professional, competent, ready to work. She walked over to where Jake was reviewing blueprints with his foreman Tom. Tom was Jake's age, had been his best friend since high school, and had never learned the concept of subtlety. His eyes went wide when he saw Natalie approaching. So do I call you Jake or Mr. Morrison in front of your crew? Jake smiled despite himself. Jake's fine, we're pretty casual here. Welcome to Oak Ridge. They shook hands. The contact lasted just a beat too long. Jake felt the calluses on his palm against the smoothness of hers, felt the strength in her grip, felt something electric pass between them that had nothing to do with professionalism and everything to do with the awareness that had been building since Saturday. Tom cleared his throat loudly. "Who's the new nurse, and why are you two looking at each other like that?" Jake felt his face get hot. "This is Natalie. She's our new occupational health nurse, and we're not looking at each other like anything." Tom just grinned and walked away whistling. Jake wanted to kill him. Natalie laughed a sound that made several of the guys on the crew look up with interest. "Is he always like that? Pretty much. You'll get used to it. He means well." The day passed in a blur of activity. Jake had meetings with architects, had to solve a problem with a steel delivery that was 3 days late, had to mediate a dispute between 2 crew members who both wanted to take the same week off in June. The usual chaos of running a construction site. But through it all, he found himself hyper-aware of Natalie's presence. She set up her medical station in one of the trailers. She did safety checks throughout the site, clipboard in hand, asking questions about protocols and procedures. She handled a minor injury with such calm competence that even the toughest guys on the crew seemed impressed. They kept accidentally running into each other. Natalie would be checking safety equipment in one area, and Jake would need to inspect the same area. She'd be organizing her medical supplies, and Jake would need to grab tools from the same storage container. Every single time their eyes would meet, and they'd smile and look away like teenagers. By the end of the day, Tom pulled Jake aside. "So, you going to ask her out, or just keep doing this awkward dance where you both pretend you're not into each other?" Jake felt defensive. She just got out of a serious relationship. She got left at the altar 4 months ago. The last thing she needs is me making things weird at her new job. Tom raised an eyebrow. Or maybe the last thing she needs is to be alone in a new city with nobody to talk to. Just think about it, man. I've known you since we were 15. I haven't seen you look at anyone like that since Sarah. That's gotta mean something. Jake drove home that night with Tom's words echoing in his head. He picked up Lily from his sister Sophie's house. Sophie took one look at his face and grinned. "You saw her today?" Jake tried to play dumb. "Saw who? The princess? Lily told me all about her." "Of course she did." Sophie followed him out to his truck. "She's pretty. She's beautiful, and smart, and kind, and completely out of my league." Sophie punched his arm hard enough to hurt. "Stop that. You're a catch, Jake Morrison. Any woman would be lucky to have you. You're loyal and hardworking and an amazing father. You've rebuilt your entire life from scratch and made it look easy even though I know it nearly killed you. Don't sell yourself short." Jake felt his throat get tight. "I don't know if I'm ready for this." Sophie's voice went soft. "No one's ever ready. You just decide that being scared is less important than being happy. You decide that the risk is worth it. And Jake, from what Lily tells me, this woman is worth the risk." That night after Lily was asleep, Jake sat in his truck in the driveway and pulled up Natalie's contact information in his phone. His thumb hovered over the call button for a full 5 minutes. What would he even say? Want to grab dinner? Want to go on a date? Want to see if this thing between us is real? Or just 2 lonely people finding comfort in proximity? He didn't call. He chickened out and sent a text instead. "Hope your first day went okay. The guys seemed to like you. Welcome to Oak Ridge officially." Her response came 30 seconds later. "It went great. Thank you for making it so easy. And thank you for yesterday. That park day meant more than you know." Jake stared at those words. Meant more than you know. He understood that feeling, the desperate gratitude for connection, for someone seeing you as more than your worst moment, for the possibility that maybe, just maybe, you weren't going to be alone forever. He texted back before he could overthink it. Same time next Sunday. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, her response. "I'll bring the coffee." Jake smiled at his phone like an idiot. "It's a date." then immediately panicked and sent another text. I mean, it's a plan. Not like a date, just our Sunday thing. The three dots appeared again. Natalie's response made his heart race. I know what you meant. See you at work tomorrow, Jake. He sat in his truck for another 10 minutes, grinning at nothing. His phone buzzed one more time. A final text from Natalie. But for what it's worth, I wouldn't have minded if it was a date. Jake's world tilted on its axis. For the first time in 4 years, he felt something that felt dangerously close to hope. Not the grim determination to survive, not the mechanical going through the motions, but real, genuine hope that maybe his story wasn't over. Maybe there were chapters left to write. Maybe Lily had been right when she said the sad princess was going to change everything. He went inside and checked on his daughter one more time. She was sprawled across her bed, Mr. Whiskers clutched to her chest, her mouth slightly open as she breathed deeply in sleep. She looked so much like Sarah it hurt. But for once the hurt felt bearable. Felt like something he could carry without being crushed by the weight of it. Thank you, he whispered to his sleeping daughter. Thank you for being brave enough to talk to a stranger. Thank you for seeing what I was too scared to see. Thank you for giving me permission to be happy again. Lily didn't wake up, but Jake felt Sarah's presence in the room anyway. Not haunting, not sad, just there, watching over their daughter, watching over him. And if he let himself believe in such things, maybe giving her blessing to whatever was beginning to bloom between a broken widower and a wounded woman who'd both learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone else see your scars. The Sunday Park tradition became as essential as breathing. Through March and April and into May every week at 11 o'clock, 3 people gathered under the same oak tree at Zilker Park. Lily brought her carefully researched bread. Jake brought snacks that met his daughter's increasingly specific standards. Natalie brought coffee and something neither of them had articulated yet, but both could feel building like pressure before a storm. At work, they maintained perfect professionalism. Natalie conducted her safety inspections with thorough competence. She handled minor injuries with calm efficiency that earned respect from even the most skeptical crew members. Jake managed his projects and his men and kept his distance during work hours because anything else would complicate everything. But the energy between them was palpable. Tom noticed. The whole crew noticed. Nobody said anything directly, but Jake caught the knowing looks and the raised eyebrows whenever he and Natalie ended up in the same space at the same time. The first Sunday in April brought rain. Jake woke to the sound of water hammering his roof and checked his phone to find a text from Natalie sent at 6 in the morning. Parks probably flooded. Rain check. He stared at those 2 words. Rain check. The easy out. The safe option. The way to keep this thing they were building contained in its neat Sunday morning box. His thumb hovered over the keyboard, ready to agree, ready to push this off another week. Then Lily appeared in his doorway, already dressed, her face falling as she looked out the window. We can't go to the park. Jake made a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Or we could do an indoor adventure. Children's Museum. He texted Natalie before he could reconsider. Indoor plan. Children's Museum if you're up for it. 3 dots appeared immediately. I'd love that. What time? They spent 4 hours at the museum. Lily was in heaven, running from exhibit to exhibit with boundless energy. They built structures in the engineering section. They painted in the art room. They played in the water features until Lily was soaked and laughing and completely exhausted. Jake and Natalie trailed behind, talking in the easy way they'd developed. About everything and nothing. About childhood memories and favorite books and the small details that make up a life. Over lunch at a diner, Lily fell asleep in the booth. One minute she was telling an elaborate story about the dinosaur exhibit. The next her head was on the table, mouth slightly open, breathing deep and even. Jake looked at his sleeping daughter with a mix of love and exasperation. She's out cold. Natalie reached across the table and brushed hair from Lily's face. The gesture was tender and natural. like something a mother would do. The resemblance to moments with Sarah hit Jake hard enough to steal his breath. This feels like family. Natalie's voice was barely above a whisper, like we've been doing this forever instead of just a few weeks. Jake met her eyes across the table, his sleeping daughter between them, the rain drumming on the diner windows, the smell of coffee and bacon grease, everything ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Yeah, it really does. Something shifted in that moment. Some invisible line they'd been dancing around for weeks got crossed without either of them quite meaning to cross it. The awareness between them intensified, became something neither could ignore or pretend wasn't happening. May brought a work injury that changed things further. One of the crew members, a welder named Martinez, sliced his hand open on a piece of sheet metal. The cut was deep enough that blood soaked through the first 3 rags they wrapped around it. Martinez went pale, started hyperventilating, panic rising as he stared at his own blood. Natalie appeared within seconds of someone shouting for the nurse. She moved with decisive calm that cut through the chaos. Direct pressure. Don't look at the wound, look at me. Breathe slowly. Count with me. 1, 2, 3. You're okay. We're going to get you to the hospital, and you're going to be fine. Jake stood back and watched her work. Watched the way she controlled the situation without ever raising her voice. The way she kept Martinez calm even as she was coordinating the ambulance and documenting everything for workers' comp. The way her hands stayed steady even when Martinez's didn't. After the ambulance left, Jake found Natalie in her medical station washing blood off her hands. You were amazing. He was freaking out and you kept him calm the whole time. Natalie didn't look up from the sink. It's what I do. But thank you for noticing. The vulnerability in her voice made Jake step closer. I always notice. She finally met his eyes in the mirror above the sink. Their gazes held for longer than was professional, longer than was safe. Long enough that Jake felt his pulse in his throat and saw the same awareness reflected in Natalie's expression. Tom's voice from outside the trailer broke the moment. Morrison, we need you on the south section. Jake stepped back. The spell broken. But something had been acknowledged in that moment of prolonged eye contact. Something neither of them was quite ready to name. June brought Lily's school play. She'd been cast as a princess naturally in a production that was more enthusiasm than actual theatrical skill. Lily had been practicing her lines for weeks, reciting them to anyone who would listen. She cornered Jake one night while he was making dinner. Can you invite Natalie to my play? Please, Daddy. I want her to see me be a real princess. Jake's first instinct was to say no. The play was in 2 weeks. Asking Natalie felt like too much, like crossing another line they'd been carefully avoiding. But Lily's pleading eyes wore him down the way they always did. He texted Natalie that night after Lily was asleep. Lily's got a school play in 2 weeks. She's playing a princess and wants to know if you'd like to come. No pressure. I know it's not really your thing. Her response came within minutes. I'd love to come. What day? And what time, the night of the play, Natalie showed up with a bouquet of flowers that made Lily squeal with delight. They were simple daisies, nothing expensive or elaborate, but Lily treated them like treasure. She clutched them to her chest and beamed up at Natalie with pure adoration. Thank you. These are beautiful. You're the best. The play itself was exactly what you'd expect from third graders. Missed cues, forgotten lines, one kid who cried halfway through and had to be coaxed back onto stage. But Lily was radiant. She delivered her lines with earnest conviction. She remembered all her choreography. She looked out into the audience at one point and waved directly at Jake and Natalie, her smile bright enough to light the entire auditorium. After the play, Natalie had tears running down her face. She was perfect. Your daughter was absolutely perfect. They went for ice cream. The 3 of them piled into Jake's truck and drove to Amy's Ice Cream on South Congress. Lily ordered her usual ridiculous concoction of flavors that shouldn't work together, but somehow did. Jake got plain vanilla because some habits die hard. Natalie got dark chocolate with almonds and explained that her grandmother used to take her for dark chocolate ice cream after good report cards. Walking back to the truck, Lily grabbed both their hands, one small hand in Jake's calloused palm, the other in Natalie's softer grip. She swung between them, humming the song from her play, completely content in a way that made Jake's chest ache with something too big to name. The cashier at the ice cream place had assumed they were a family, had called Natalie Mom without thinking. Neither Jake nor Natalie had corrected her. That mistake sat between them, now heavy with implication. July brought Lily's 9th birthday. Jake had planned a pool party at one of those inflatable water park places that kids loved and parents tolerated. 20 of Lily's classmates running around screaming and splashing and eating pizza and cake. The kind of chaos that required serious orchestration. Natalie offered to help before Jake could even ask. "I'm good at wrangling children, comes with the nursing territory." She showed up early to help set up. She brought a present that made Lily scream with joy, an expensive Belle doll that Jake had considered buying but couldn't quite justify. She stayed through the entire party, helping herd kids and serve food and make sure nobody drowned in the inflatable pools. "You're a natural at this," Jake's sister Sophie appeared at his elbow halfway through the party. She'd been watching Natalie interact with the kids with open assessment. At what? Being a mom. Being part of a family. You should stop being scared and ask her out properly. Jake felt his defenses rise. "It's complicated." Sophie rolled her eyes. "It's only complicated because you're making it complicated. That woman is perfect for you. Lily adores her. You light up every time she's around. What are you waiting for the right time?" For certainty. For some sign that this wouldn't blow up in his face and hurt his daughter in the process. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. You of all people should know that. Sarah didn't get a choice about leaving. But you have a choice about living. Make the choice, Jake. That night, after all the guests had left and Lily had crashed from sugar and exhaustion, Jake walked Natalie to her car. The parking lot was nearly empty. The Texas summer heat was finally breaking into something almost pleasant. "Thank you for today. You didn't have to do all that." Natalie leaned against her car door. "I wanted to." "Lily's special. You're both special." The words hung between them. Jake could feel the moment stretching, could feel the possibility of leaning in, of closing the distance, of finally acknowledging what had been building for months. But fear held him in place. Fear that he'd mess this up, that he'd hurt her, or hurt Lily, or both, that he'd sully Sarah's memory somehow by wanting someone else. "I should go. Early morning tomorrow." She got in her car but rolled down the window before pulling away. "Jake, for what it's worth, this was one of the best days I've had in a really long time. Thank you for including me." He watched her taillights disappear into traffic and felt like he'd just missed something important, like he'd been given an opportunity and let it slip through his fingers out of cowardice. Lily appeared beside him in her bathing suit and party dress combo, still wearing her birthday crown. "You should have kissed her." Jake nearly choked. "What?" "You like her. She likes you. In the movies, that's when people kiss. This isn't a movie, kiddo. But it could be. It could be a really good story if you'd just be brave." Out of the mouths of 9-year-olds came truth that cut like surgery. Late July brought the announcement that changed everything. The company barbecue happened every year at the end of summer. A chance for the crew and their families to gather before the brutal Texas August made outdoor socializing unbearable. Jake had been going to these things for a decade. They were fine, predictable, safe. Lily begged him to invite Natalie. "Please, Daddy. She needs to meet everyone. She needs to see that we're fun." Jake sent the text with trepidation. "Company barbecue this Saturday. Want to come?" "Fair warning, Lily will be disappointed if you don't." Natalie's response was enthusiastic. "I'd love to. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself. And prepare for Lily to show you off to everyone." Saturday arrived hot and bright. The barbecue was at a park with covered pavilions and plenty of shade. Crew members and their families spread across picnic tables. Kids ran wild. Men clustered around grills arguing about the proper way to cook brisket. Wives and girlfriends compared notes on the best places to shop and the worst traffic routes in Austin. Natalie arrived wearing a sundress that made Jake forget how to form coherent thoughts for a solid 30 seconds. The fabric moved when she walked. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in its usual work ponytail. She looked softer, more approachable, dangerously beautiful. Lily attached herself to Natalie's side immediately, dragged her around the entire barbecue, introducing her to absolutely everyone. "This is Natalie. She's Daddy's friend. She's a nurse, and she's really pretty, and she knows everything about princesses." The wives assumed Natalie was Jake's girlfriend. Multiple people made comments about how nice it was to see Jake with someone, how good they looked together, how happy he seemed. Neither Jake nor Natalie corrected anyone. It was easier to just let people assume, easier than explaining the complicated truth that they weren't quite dating, but weren't quite just friends either. The three-legged race was mandatory for all families. Jake found himself paired with Natalie while Lily cheered from the sidelines. They tied their legs together with a bandana and immediately stumbled. Natalie grabbed his arm to keep from falling. They were pressed together, laughing, trying to coordinate their steps. Left, right, left, right. Jake tried to establish a rhythm. "You're going too fast. Slow down. You're going too slow. Speed up." They made it about 10 yards before collapsing in a heap. Natalie landed half on top of Jake, both of them laughing too hard to breathe. For a moment, their faces were inches apart. Jake could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes, could smell her shampoo, could feel the warmth of her body against his. The moment stretched. Neither moved. The awareness between them crackled like electricity before a lightning strike. Then Lily was there, climbing on both of them, squealing about how funny they looked. The spell broke. They untangled themselves and stood up, both carefully, not meeting each other's eyes. That evening, walking to the parking lot, Lily ran ahead to play with some kids one last time. Jake and Natalie found themselves alone in the fading light. The cicadas were starting their evening chorus. The heat was finally breaking into something tolerable. "I'm sorry everyone assumed we were together. That must have been awkward." Natalie stopped walking. She turned to face him directly. "I didn't mind, actually. It felt really natural." Jake's heart hammered against his ribs. The moment felt significant in a way he couldn't quite articulate, like standing on the edge of something high and deciding whether to jump. The words came out before his brain could stop them. "Would you want to get dinner sometime? Like actual dinner. Just the two of us. Like a date." Natalie's eyes went wide. "Like a real date. Not just friends hanging out." Jake forced himself to hold her gaze. "Yeah, a real date. But only if you're ready. Absolutely no pressure. We can keep doing exactly what we're doing if that's better." The silence stretched long enough that Jake started to panic, started to formulate a retreat, started to figure out how to walk this back without making things weird. Then Natalie smiled, that slow, genuine smile that made something in Jake's chest expand painfully. "I'd really like that. But can we go slow? My last relationship kind of destroyed my ability to trust my own judgment. Slow is perfect. I've got a 9-year-old daughter and a dead wife. I'm not exactly rushing into anything either." Natalie's laugh was soft and relieved. "So, Thursday. There's that Italian place on 6th Street you mentioned." Jake felt lighter than he had in years. "Thursday's perfect." They parted ways with promises to see each other at work Monday. Jake watched her drive away with a stupid grin on his face. Lily appeared at his side, slipping her hand into his. "You asked her on a date. How did you know?" "Because you look happy. Really happy. The way you used to look in the old pictures with Mom. Is that okay?" "Me being happy with someone who isn't your mom?" Lily squeezed his hand. Mom would want you to be happy. She told me that before she went to heaven. She said I had to make sure you kept living, not just surviving. Jake's vision blurred. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You're just now catching up. Thursday evening, Jake stood in front of his closet in full panic mode. Every shirt looked wrong. Too casual, too formal, too worn, too new. Lily supervised from his bed, offering commentary on every choice. The blue one. It makes your eyes pretty. Since when are my eyes pretty? Since always. You just never notice. He went with the blue shirt. Spent too long in the bathroom trying to tame his hair. Checked his reflection 17 times and hated what he saw every time. A 34-year-old widower with calloused hands and worry lines who had no business taking out a woman like Natalie Ross. You look handsome, Daddy. She's going to love it. How do you know? Because she already loves you. She just hasn't said it yet. Jake's heart did something complicated in his chest. Don't get ahead of yourself, kiddo. But Lily just smiled. That knowing smile that was too old for her face. I'm not ahead. I'm exactly where I need to be. Giovanni's Italian restaurant was small and intimate. Exposed brick walls, candles on every table, the smell of garlic and tomatoes and fresh bread. Jake arrived 5 minutes early and immediately regretted it. Sitting alone at the table felt pathetic, like advertising his desperation. Then Natalie walked in and everything else disappeared. She wore a dress that was somehow both simple and devastating. Her hair fell loose past her shoulders. She looked nervous and beautiful, and so out of Jake's league it was almost funny. You look beautiful. Her smile was shy. You look pretty great yourself. They ordered wine neither of them really wanted, studied menus they weren't really reading. The initial awkwardness felt thick enough to choke on. Jake couldn't remember how to do this, how to date, how to be someone other than a widowed father just trying to survive each day. Then Natalie asked about his worst construction disaster, and something released. Jake told her about the time a concrete pour went catastrophically wrong, and they'd had to jackhammer out an entire foundation and start over. Natalie told him about a patient who'd come in with a nail gun injury and refused to admit he'd been trying to take a selfie while working. The stories flowed. The wine helped. The nervousness faded into something warmer. Over entrees, Jake found himself talking about Sarah in a way he rarely did with anyone. Not just the tragedy of her death, but the reality of their relationship. How they'd been high school sweethearts. How they'd gotten married too young and somehow made it work anyway. How she'd been his whole world and then suddenly she wasn't there, and he'd had to figure out how to keep breathing when half his heart was buried in the ground. She sounds like she was amazing. She was. But that doesn't mean I want to live in the past forever. I don't want Sarah's memory to be a cage I live in. I think she'd hate that. Natalie reached across the table and took his hand. Her touch was warm and solid and real. I think she'd be proud of you, of what you've built with Lily, of the man you've become since she's been gone. Jake had to look away before the tears in his eyes could fall. Thank you for saying that. I'm only saying what's true. Natalie shared her story then, the full version she'd only hinted at in pieces over the months. Derek, 5 years together. The engagement that felt right even when something in her gut kept whispering warnings she ignored. The wedding planning that consumed a year of her life. Every detail perfect, every contingency planned for, everything exactly as it should be. The morning of the wedding, she'd been in the bridal suite, hair and makeup done, dress on, bridesmaids around her. Her phone had buzzed with a text from Derek, the man who was supposed to be waiting at the altar for her. I can't do this. I'm not ready. I'm sorry. Not a call, not a conversation, a text message. 5 words that detonated her entire world while she stood there in a wedding dress that cost $3,000 surrounded by friends who didn't know what to say. He texted you. On your wedding day. Natalie's laugh was bitter. Didn't even have the courage to say it to my face. Just sent a text and turned off his phone. 200 people showed up to that venue. I had to tell every single one of them there wasn't going to be a wedding. Had to stand there in that dress and explain that the groom had changed his mind. Jake felt rage building in his chest. Rage at a man he'd never met. Rage at the cowardice and cruelty of it. That's unforgivable. Natalie shrugged, but her eyes were wet. The worst part wasn't the humiliation. It was realizing I'd wasted 5 years on someone who didn't love me enough to be honest, who didn't respect me enough to have a real conversation, who took the easy way out and left me to clean up the mess. You didn't waste 5 years. You learned what you won't accept, what you deserve better than. That's not wasted time. The words seemed to hit Natalie hard. She squeezed Jake's hand across the table. How are you this understanding? Most guys would run screaming from someone with this much baggage. We've all got baggage. Mine just happens to be a dead wife and a daughter who still has nightmares about losing her mom. Your baggage is a coward ex-fiancé who didn't deserve you in the first place. Neither of us chose these things, but we're choosing how we move forward. And I'm choosing to believe that maybe we're exactly what each other needs. Natalie's eyes were full of tears now. I'm scared. I'm so scared of getting hurt again, of trusting my judgment and being wrong, of letting someone in and having them leave. Jake understood that fear intimately. I can't promise you that I'll never leave because life happens and things are unpredictable. But I can promise you that I will fight. I will show up. I will choose you every single day that I'm able to choose. And I'm tired of being scared of what might go wrong. I want to take a chance on what might go right. The words hung between them, something fundamental shifting in the space across the table, something that couldn't be taken back or walked away from. A line crossed. A commitment made. When they finally left the restaurant, it was nearly 11. The Austin night was warm and clear, stars barely visible through the city light pollution, but present nonetheless. They walked slowly to the parking lot, neither in a hurry to end the night. By Natalie's car, they stood too close, the awareness between them crackling like heat lightning. Jake could smell her perfume, could see the rapid pulse in her throat, could feel his own heart hammering against his ribs. I'd really like to kiss you goodnight, if that's okay. Natalie's voice came out breathless. I'd really like that too. The kiss was tentative at first, testing, learning. Then something caught fire and Jake's hands were in her hair and her arms were around his neck, and the kiss deepened into something that made the world tilt sideways. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, Jake felt like he'd been remade into someone new. When can I see you again? Natalie's laugh was shaky. Sunday, park day, and maybe another dinner next week. Both. Definitely both. Driving home, Jake couldn't stop smiling. He felt 17 again. Like anything was possible. Like the future was something to look forward to instead of something to survive. He pulled into his driveway and sat in the truck for a long moment, letting the feelings sink in, letting himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he was allowed to be happy again. His phone buzzed. A text from Natalie. That was perfect. Thank you for giving me a chance. He typed back immediately. Thank you for taking one. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, her message came through. For what it's worth, I'm falling for you, Jake Morrison. And it scares me and excites me in equal measure. Jake stared at those words until his phone screen went dark. Then he got out of the truck and walked inside where his daughter was probably still awake, even though Sophie had promised to put her to bed hours ago. Lily was indeed awake, sitting on the couch in her pajamas, grinning like she'd won the lottery. How was the date? It was perfect. Are you boyfriend and girlfriend now? Jake sat down next to his daughter. Would that be okay with you? Lily threw her arms around him. Yes. I told you she liked you. I told you this was going to be a good thing. You did. You were right about everything. I usually am. Adults just forget to listen to kids. Through September and early October, Jake and Natalie settled into something that felt like a relationship, even though neither of them had officially labeled it. They still had Sunday park days. They added Tuesday movie nights. They cooked dinners together at Jake's house while Lily did homework at the kitchen table. They fell into rhythms that felt natural, comfortable, right. Natalie integrated into their lives like she'd always been there. She helped Lily with math homework because Jake had always been terrible at fractions. She taught Lily how to braid hair in complicated patterns that Jake could never master. She showed up at soccer games and school conferences. She fit into the empty spaces in their family like the missing piece of a puzzle they hadn't realized was incomplete. At work, they maintained professional boundaries, but the crew knew. Tom never let Jake forget it, making comments about workplace romances and being whipped. Jake took it in stride because Tom was right. He was falling hard. Harder than he'd thought possible. Harder than was probably smart given how recently both of them had been broken. In mid-October, Sophie pulled Jake aside after a family dinner. "You're going to propose, aren't you? I can see it all over your face." Jake felt caught. "Is it too soon? We've only been officially dating for 6 weeks." Sophie smiled. "When you know, you know." "Does Lily know?" "She's been asking when Natalie becomes her real mom for like 2 weeks now." "Then what are you waiting for? Life's too short to waste time on fear. You of all people should understand that." But Jake did wait, not out of fear exactly, more out of wanting to be certain. Wanting to know they could weather real challenges together before making that kind of commitment. Wanting to prove to himself and to Natalie that this was built on solid ground and not just mutual loneliness. The challenge came in early November. Jake arrived at work on a Tuesday morning to find Natalie distracted during safety rounds. She kept checking her phone with a stressed expression that made his stomach clench. She avoided eye contact. Moved through her duties mechanically instead of with her usual engaged competence. At lunch, Jake found her in her medical station staring at her phone. "What's wrong?" "You've been off all day." Natalie looked up with tears threatening. "Can we talk after work?" "Not here." Jake's world tilted. "Is it us?" "Did I do something?" "No, it's not you. It's complicated. Can you come to my apartment after you drop Lily at Sophie's?" The rest of the day crawled by. Jake couldn't focus on blueprints, couldn't concentrate on crew management. Tom asked him 3 times if he was feeling okay. Jake brushed him off with excuses about not sleeping well. But the truth was, his mind was spinning through worst-case scenarios. She was breaking up with him. She'd realized this was a mistake. She was moving back to Dallas. She'd met someone else. Every possibility worse than the last. That evening, after dropping Lily off with promises to pick her up before bedtime, Jake drove to Natalie's apartment with his hands shaking on the steering wheel. She'd been crying. That much was obvious the moment she opened the door. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her face was blotchy. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. "Talk to me." "What's going on?" Natalie's voice cracked on the first word. "Derek showed up at my apartment last night. He drove all the way from Dallas. He wants me back." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. His vision tunneled, his chest constricted. Every fear he'd been carrying for months crystallized into this moment. Of course, Derek wanted her back. Of course, the investment banker with the expensive car and the Dallas pedigree had realized what he'd thrown away. Of course, Jake wasn't enough to compete with 5 years of history. "What did you tell him?" "I told him he was 4 months too late, but he's staying in Austin through Thanksgiving. He wants me to think about it, to really consider if I'm making the right choice, if I'm running away from something hard instead of fighting for it." "Do you want to think about it?" Natalie's tears came harder. "I don't know. He humiliated me. He left me at the altar in front of 200 people. But we were together for 5 years, and part of me wonders if I gave up too easily. If I'm being a coward by not at least hearing him out." Jake forced his voice to stay calm, even though everything in him was screaming. "Take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere." The lie tasted bitter on his tongue. Because he was going somewhere. He was going to drive home and pour a drink and call his sister and probably cry into his pillow like he hadn't done since the months after Sarah died. He was going to fall apart because he'd let himself hope, and hope was always a mistake. You're not angry. I'm terrified. But I'd rather you figure this out now than wonder forever. I'd rather lose you to certainty than keep you through guilt. Natalie kissed him. It tasted like salt and desperation, like goodbye even though neither of them said the word. Over the next week, Natalie pulled back. She stopped coming to Sunday park days. She was distant at work. She didn't respond to texts with her usual enthusiasm. Jake respected her space even though it was killing him, even though every day felt like waiting for an execution, even though Lily kept asking where Natalie was, and Jake kept making excuses that felt thinner each time. Why isn't Natalie coming over anymore? Did I do something wrong? Jake knelt down to his daughter's eye level. No, baby. You didn't do anything. Natalie's just dealing with some complicated stuff right now. Grown-up stuff. Is she scared? Like when I was scared of the dark and didn't want to sleep alone? Jake felt something click into place. Yeah, I think she's scared. When I was scared, you didn't leave me alone. You stayed with me until I wasn't scared anymore. Maybe Natalie needs someone to stay too. His 9-year-old daughter had just articulated what Jake had been too afraid to see. Natalie didn't need space. She needed someone to fight for her, to show up even when it was hard, to prove that not everyone would abandon her when things got complicated. On Wednesday evening, Jake drove to Natalie's apartment without calling first. He knocked until she answered. She looked exhausted, hollow, like she'd been crying for days. Derek's car with its Dallas plates was conspicuously absent from the parking lot. What are you doing here? Jake didn't let himself hesitate. Derek came back, didn't he? And now you're spiraling because the last person you trusted left you at the altar and you're terrified. I'm going to do the same thing. You're terrified that your judgment is broken, that you'll choose wrong again, that everyone leaves eventually. So why bother trying? Natalie's face crumpled. How did you know? Because I know you, and I know what it's like to be scared of letting someone in when you've lost someone before. I lost Sarah, and for 4 years I couldn't even imagine loving anyone else, because what if I lost them too? What if I opened my heart again and it got destroyed again, and this time I couldn't survive it? Jake took her hands in his. They were cold and trembling. I can't promise you that I'll never leave because life happens and things are unpredictable. But I can promise you that I will fight. I will show up. I will choose you every single day that I'm able to choose, Natalie. I'm so tired of being scared of what might go wrong that I miss out on what could go right. I love you. I'm in love with you. And I know it's only been 7 months, but I've never been more sure of anything except Lily. You can go back to Derek if that's what you need. You can take all the time in the world to figure out what you want. But I needed you to know that I'm here, that I'm not running away, that some people show up even when it's hard. Natalie kissed him hard enough to bruise. Her arms wrapped around his neck like she was drowning, and he was the only solid thing in a churning sea. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. I love you too. I've loved you since that day at the park when you talked about Sarah, and I realized you were the bravest person I'd ever met. You loved someone so much that losing them almost killed you, and you still chose to keep your heart open. Still chose to love your daughter fiercely. Still chose to take a chance on me, even though I'm a mess. I choose you. I choose this. I'm done letting Derek have any power over my future. Jake's relief was so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. What are you going to tell him? That I found someone who showed up when it mattered, and I'm not stupid enough to let that go. Friday morning, Natalie met Derek at the Corner Cup Cafe, the same place where she'd met Jake and Lily 9 months ago. The symmetry felt deliberate, like closing a circle, like choosing which story she wanted to live in. Derek was already there when she arrived. He looked exactly as she remembered. Sharp suit, perfect hair, the smile he'd practiced in mirrors until it looked effortless. He stood when he saw her, the gesture polished and automatic. Everything about him screamed success and stability and the life she'd thought she wanted. Nat, you look good. Austin agrees with you. She didn't correct him on the nickname, didn't tell him she went by Natalie now. Let him keep his illusions for the next 10 minutes. Thank you for meeting me. I know this isn't easy, but I think we owe it to ourselves to have a real conversation, to figure out if what we had is worth fighting for. Derek launched into his prepared speech. He'd bought the house they'd talked about, the one with the yard she'd wanted, with room for an office and a future nursery. He'd been in therapy, working on his commitment issues, understanding why he'd panicked. His parents still asked about her. Her mother still called his mother. Their lives were woven together in ways that couldn't be easily untangled. 5 years, Nat. We invested 5 years. You're just going to throw that away for some guy you've known a few months. Natalie let him finish. Let him lay out his case with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned whether he deserved what he wanted. Then she leaned forward, hands folded on the table, voice steady. I'm with someone. Someone who saw me at my lowest and didn't run away. Someone who has a daughter who makes me believe I could be a good mother. Someone who's teaching me what it means when a person chooses to show up every single day instead of just when it's convenient. Derek's practiced smile faltered. This construction worker, you think he can give you what I can? You think he understands your world? My world, the world where you texted me on our wedding day instead of having the courage to say it to my face. That world, because Jake's world looks a lot better from where I'm sitting. His world has honesty and integrity and people who keep their promises. We have history. We have plans. You're making a mistake choosing him over everything we built. Natalie felt something cold and final settle in her chest. You threw away everything we built when you sent that text. I spent 4 months thinking I wasn't good enough, that I'd done something wrong, that I'd pushed too hard or wanted too much. But the truth is, you were never brave enough to be the partner I deserved. And Jake is. He's braver than you'll ever be. She stood up. The conversation was over. You took my choice away once when you left me at that altar. You don't get to do it again. Goodbye, Derek. Walking out of that cafe felt like shedding a skin, like becoming someone new. Someone who knew her own worth. Someone who wouldn't settle for someone else's cowardice disguised as cold feet. The Austin sunshine hit her face, and she breathed deep for the first time in a week. She drove straight to the construction site. Found Jake supervising a concrete pour clipboard in hand, that focused expression he got when he was completely absorbed in his work. She waited until he looked up, until their eyes met across the job site. Then she walked toward him with purpose. I told him, it's over. Really over. Jake's face transformed. Relief and joy and love so naked it made her chest ache. Are you sure? No regrets. The only thing I regret is the week I wasted being scared. I'm done being scared. I'm choosing you, Jake Morrison. I'm choosing this life we're building. He kissed her right there on the job site. The crew erupted in whistles and applause. Tom shouted something about finally getting with the program. Jake's hands cupped her face like she was something precious, something worth fighting for. When they broke apart, both of them were grinning like idiots. Does this mean we're officially together, like boyfriend-girlfriend official? Natalie laughed. I think we're past boyfriend-girlfriend. I think we're whatever comes after that. Good. Because I was planning to ask you to move in anyway. Your lease is up in February. Lily's been planning how to redecorate the spare room for you. We've got a whole color scheme picked out. The casualness of it. The assumption that of course she'd say yes. The family they'd already become without needing to announce it formally. Natalie felt tears threatening again, but these were different. These were the kind that came from finally finding where you belonged. Thanksgiving came 3 weeks later, Natalie's first with Jake's family. Sophie insisted on hosting despite having 3 kids under 10 and a kitchen that barely fit everyone. The chaos was wonderful. Kids running everywhere, football on TV that nobody was actually watching, the smell of turkey and stuffing and pumpkin pie. Natalie helped in the kitchen learning Sophie's biscuit recipe, listening to stories about Jake and Sophie growing up. Stories about Sarah, too, which surprised her. Sophie talked about Sarah easily, fondly, without the careful avoidance most people used around the subject. She would have liked you. Sarah always had good instincts about people. She would have seen what I see, that you're exactly what Jake and Lily need. The words lodged in Natalie's chest, painful and precious at the same time. Thank you for saying that. I never want to erase her memory. I never want Lily to feel like I'm trying to replace her mother. Sophie's voice was fierce. You're not replacing anyone. You're adding to what they already have. Love doesn't work like that, where you run out of room. It expands. It makes space. Sarah loved Jake enough to want him to be happy after she was gone. She told me that before she died, made me promise I'd kick his ass if he tried to be a martyr instead of living. After dinner, after the kids had collapsed into sugar comas in various corners of the house, Jake found Natalie on the back porch. The November air had that crisp bite that passed for winter in Texas. She'd borrowed one of his jackets. It smelled like him, like sawdust and coffee and safety. Thank you for today, for being here, for fitting into my family like you've always been part of it. Natalie leaned into his warmth. Thank you for making room for me, for not being scared to let me in, even though you've lost so much. Sophie told me something today. She said Sarah made her promise to make sure I kept living instead of just surviving. I think I've been surviving for 4 years, but with you, I feel like I'm finally living again. They stood there until the cold drove them inside, until Lily appeared demanding they play board games, until the day faded into evening, and evening faded into the kind of exhaustion that comes from too much food and too much family and too much joy. Early December. Jake began planning the proposal. He consulted Sophie, who cried and hugged him and demanded to be involved in every detail. He consulted Tom, who gave terrible advice and then laughed when Jake ignored all of it. He consulted his mother, who'd moved to Arizona but still called every Sunday to check on Lily and lecture Jake about not working too hard. Most importantly, he consulted Lily. Took her to a jewelry store after school on a Tuesday. Let her help pick the ring. She took the task with characteristic seriousness, examining every option with critical 9-year-old eyes. It needs to be princess-level beautiful, Daddy. Not too big because that's tacky, but big enough that her friends will be impressed, and it has to sparkle like crazy because Natalie deserves sparkle. They chose a solitaire diamond in a platinum setting. Classic, elegant, the kind of ring that would still look beautiful in 50 years. Jake maxed out his savings account and tried not to think about the credit card bill. Some things were worth going into debt for. Can I help with the proposal? Please, Daddy. I want to be part of it. I wouldn't do it without you, kiddo. This isn't just me asking Natalie to marry me. It's both of us asking her to be part of our family. Your input matters more than anything. Lily threw her arms around him right there in the jewelry store. You're the best daddy in the whole world. Mom would be so proud of us. The ring lived in Jake's sock drawer for 3 weeks. Every time he opened the drawer to grab socks, he saw the small velvet box and felt his pulse spike. He caught himself almost proposing a dozen times. Over dinner, when Natalie was laughing at one of Lily's jokes. During a Sunday park day when she was pushing Lily on the swings. Late at night when they were tangled together on his couch watching terrible movies and she fit against him like she'd been designed for that exact space. But he wanted it to be perfect, wanted it to be memorable, wanted it to honor where they'd started and acknowledge where they were going. So he waited and planned and tried not to let Lily spoil the surprise, even though she could barely contain her excitement. Christmas came with its usual chaos. Natalie joined them for everything. She was there when they picked out their tree, when they decorated with ornaments that included ones Sarah had made years ago. When Lily insisted on making cookies for Santa, even though she was definitely too old to believe anymore, but kept up the charade for tradition's sake. Natalie gave Lily a handmade ornament for the tree, a small ceramic princess with Lily's name painted on it. You're part of this family now. This is your tree too. Your traditions. Lily burst into tears. The good kind. The kind that came from being seen and valued and chosen. She hung the ornament right next to the one Sarah had made the year she died. The two ornaments side by side felt symbolic. Past and future. Loss and hope. The way grief and joy could coexist if you were brave enough to let them. On Christmas night, after Lily was finally asleep and the house was quiet, Natalie curled against Jake on the couch. The tree lights cast shadows across the living room. The house smelled like pine and cinnamon. I've been thinking about my lease. It's up in February, and I was wondering if maybe I should start looking for houses. Somewhere with a yard. Somewhere I can really settle instead of just camping in an apartment. Jake's heart hammered. He knew he should encourage this, should support her finding her own place. But the thought of her living somewhere else felt wrong. Felt like moving backward instead of forward. Or you could just move in here. Save yourself the hassle of house hunting. We've got room. Lily's been asking when you're going to live with us officially since like October. Natalie pulled back to look at him. Are you sure that's a big step? I've never been more sure of anything. But maybe hold off on making any apartment decisions until mid-January. Just trust me. The confusion on her face was adorable. Why mid-January specifically? You'll see. Christmas gave way to the anticipation of New Year's Eve. Jake coordinated with the cafe manager, Mrs. Patterson, who'd been running the Corner Cup for 20 years and remembered that Saturday morning in March when a crying woman and an 8-year-old girl had changed 3 lives. She was thrilled to help, insisted on decorating, insisted on closing that section of the cafe for an hour, insisted this was the most romantic thing she'd seen in her entire career, serving coffee to Austin. Lily worked on her sign in secret, poster board covered in glitter and stickers and drawings of princesses, the words in her careful handwriting, "Will you be my mom?" She showed it to Jake for approval, and he had to turn away to hide his tears. You think she'll like it? I think she'll love it. I think she'll cry happy tears. I think this is going to be the best day of all our lives. New Year's Eve morning arrived cold and clear, unusual for Austin where winters were usually mild and gray, but the sky was brilliant blue and the air had that crystalline quality that made everything feel sharp and possible. Jake woke before dawn, too nervous to sleep, too excited to lie still. He checked his pocket 17 times to make sure the ring was there, checked his phone to confirm the time, checked on Lily, who was already awake and practically vibrating with anticipation. Is it time yet? Can we go now? Not yet, kiddo. We're picking up Natalie at 10. You need to eat breakfast and get dressed, and remember not to tell her what's happening. I won't tell. I promise. But Daddy, I'm so excited I might explode. Please don't explode. Your mom would kill me if I had to clean that up. Lily giggled. That's gross, Daddy. At 9:45, Jake texted Natalie, "Want to go somewhere special this morning before New Year's Eve gets crazy?" Her response came immediately. Sure, where it's a surprise. Wear something comfortable. Pick you up at 10, they collected her from her apartment. She looked curious and beautiful in jeans and a sweater. Lily bounced in the back seat, barely able to contain herself. Every time Natalie glanced back, Lily would dissolve into giggles. You two are being very mysterious. Jake kept his eyes on the road. Just trust us. When they pulled up to the Corner Cup Cafe, Natalie's confusion deepened. We're going to our regular coffee shop. This is your big New Year's plan. Just trust me, this place is important. Inside, Mrs. Patterson had outdone herself. Their special table in the corner was set with fresh flowers. The rest of that section was empty, cordoned off with a small sign that read, "Private Event." Soft music played from speakers. Everything felt intentional. Sacred. Jake led Natalie to their table. The same table where they'd sat 9 months ago. Where Lily had called her a sad princess. Where everything had started. Natalie's eyes were already filling with understanding. Jake took her hands across the table. His heart was hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. Lily sat beside him, clutching her sign, eyes wide with anticipation. 9 months ago, you walked through that door and my daughter called you a sad princess, and I had no idea that in that moment my entire life was about to change. You came to Austin heartbroken and alone. You sat in this cafe looking at photos of a wedding that never happened. And Lily saw you and said we should help you. His voice cracked. He had to pause to breathe. Sweetheart, helping you has been the best thing I've ever done besides being Lily's dad. You showed me that my heart could grow, that loving you doesn't mean forgetting Sarah. It means honoring her by choosing to keep living, to keep opening myself up to happiness, to keep believing that good things can happen even after terrible loss. He stood, knelt on one knee, the traditional gesture that felt both cliché and perfect. Natalie's hands covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. But before Jake could pull out the ring, Lily jumped up. She'd been holding her sign under the table hidden until this perfect moment. Now she held it up with both hands, grinning so wide her face looked like it might split. Will you be my mom? The words in glitter and marker, surrounded by princesses and hearts. The question that mattered most. Because this wasn't just Jake proposing to Natalie. This was both of them asking her to complete their family. To be more than a girlfriend or a partner. To be a mother. To be permanent. Natalie sobbed. Actual sobs. She reached for Lily and pulled her into a fierce hug. Yes. Oh my God, yes. Of course, yes. But Jake wasn't done. He pulled out the ring. The box small and velvet and holding everything they were promising each other. Natalie Ross, will you marry me? Will you marry us? Will you be Lily's mom and my wife and part of this family we've been building together? Will you take a chance on two people who love you more than we thought possible? Natalie was nodding before he finished. Yes. Both of you. All of it. I love you both so much. I never thought I'd get this. Never thought I'd have a family that chose me, that wanted me, that fought for me. Jake slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Sparkled in the morning light exactly like Lily had insisted it should. The cafe erupted in applause. Other customers who'd been watching from respectful distances. Mrs. Patterson crying behind the counter. The moment crystallizing into something that would live in memory forever. Lily threw herself at both of them. A 3-person hug, a family officially forming. They stood there crying and laughing and holding each other while the whole cafe celebrated. Mrs. Patterson brought out champagne. Sparkling cider for Lily. They toasted to new beginnings, to taking chances, to the courage it takes to love again after loss. You're going to be my real mom now, like forever and ever. Natalie's voice shook. Forever and ever, sweetheart. I promise. The celebration stretched, photos at their table, Lily insisting on pictures with her sign. Natalie couldn't stop looking at the ring, couldn't stop crying, couldn't stop smiling. Jake felt lighter than he had in years, like he'd been carrying weight he could finally put down. When they finally left the cafe, Natalie pulled out an envelope from her purse. I have something to tell you too. I was going to wait until tonight, but now feels right. The envelope contained an acceptance letter. University of Texas at Austin, nurse practitioner program, part-time, starting in January. I applied in October, before Derek came back, before everything got complicated. I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure I'd get in. Wasn't sure I was staying long-term, but now I know exactly where I belong. Right here, with you, building a life that's ours. Jake kissed her, long and slow. The kind of kiss that promised forever. You're incredible. We're going to celebrate everything today. The engagement, the program, the fact that we're building a future together. They drove to Zilker Park, their park, where Sunday traditions had cemented into something unbreakable. They walked the trails, fed the ducks, pushed Lily on the swings, did all the things they'd been doing for months, but now with rings and promises and the weight of commitment making everything feel more real. That evening, Sophie hosted a celebration dinner. Jake's entire family crowded into her small house. Natalie's parents drove in from Dallas. Her brothers, who'd been protective and suspicious in January, were warm and welcoming now. They'd seen what Jake had done for their sister, how he'd helped her heal, how he loved her fiercely and showed up consistently and proved that not all men were cowards. Sophie pulled Jake into the kitchen while everyone was eating. "I'm so proud of you. Sarah would be too. You didn't just survive losing her. You built something beautiful from the wreckage. You let yourself love again. That takes more courage than most people ever manage. You think she'd really be okay with this? With me marrying someone else?" Sophie's eyes were fierce. "Sarah loved you enough to want you to be happy. She told me that before she died, said if anything happened to her, I had to make sure you didn't turn into a ghost, that you kept living, kept loving, kept being the man she fell in love with. This is you keeping that promise. This is you honoring her by refusing to let grief win." The months between engagement and wedding flew by. Natalie moved in during February. Her furniture mixed with Jake's. Her books filled empty shelves. Her clothes took over half the closet. The house that had been Jake and Lily's became Jake and Lily and Natalie's, became a home filled with laughter and chaos and the particular brand of joy that comes from choosing each other every single day. They decided on a May wedding. Small and intimate. 75 people. Just family and close friends. An outdoor venue with gardens and string lights and the kind of Texas spring weather that made you forget summer was coming. They didn't need elaborate, didn't need expensive. They needed honest and real and focused on what mattered. Two people who'd been broken finding wholeness together. A little girl who'd lost her mother gaining another one. A family forming not from biology, but from choice. Lily took her role as flower girl with religious seriousness. She practiced her walk down the aisle until Jake worried she'd wear a path in the carpet. She picked out her dress with meticulous care. Pale pink. Very princess. Exactly what a girl who'd called Natalie a sad princess 9 months ago should wear to the wedding. The wedding planning brought unexpected moments. Like when they were choosing invitations and Lily asked if they could include Sarah somehow, if there could be a place for her at the ceremony. Jake felt his throat close. "What do you mean, kiddo?" "A picture, maybe. Or a candle. So Mom knows she's still part of us. So people remember that we loved her. That we still love her. That loving Natalie doesn't erase Mom." Natalie was crying. "Of course we can do that. Your mom should be honored. She gave me the 2 most important people in my life. We wouldn't be here without her." They set up a small table at the ceremony site. Sarah's picture, a lit candle, a simple card that read, "In loving memory of Sarah Morrison, whose love made this family possible." Guests cried when they saw it. Even people who'd never met Sarah understood the generosity it represented. The grace of acknowledging that love doesn't die. It transforms. It makes space for new love without erasing what came before. May 16th arrived with perfect weather. Warm but not hot. Clear blue sky. The kind of day that felt like a gift. Jake woke early in the guest room at Sophie's house where he'd spent the night. Tradition dictated he shouldn't see Natalie before the ceremony. He texted her anyway. "Good morning, future wife. Can't wait to marry you today." Her response came seconds later. "Good morning, future husband. I'm the luckiest woman alive." Tom and Marcus showed up at 7 to help Jake get ready. They brought donuts and coffee and terrible jokes that actually helped settle Jake's nerves. By 8, he was in his tuxedo, looking at himself in the mirror and seeing a man who'd survived the worst and come out believing in happiness again. A man who'd been brave enough to love twice, who'd taken the risk even knowing how badly it could hurt to lose. You nervous Jake met Tom's eyes in the mirror. Not even a little. "This is the rightest thing I've ever done." At the venue, guests were arriving. 75 people who'd watched Jake survive. who'd held him up when he couldn't stand, who'd believed in him even when he couldn't believe in himself. They took their seats in white chairs arranged in rows. The garden was decorated simply, white flowers everywhere, string lights hung from trees. A violinist played soft music, everything understated and elegant, like Natalie herself. The small memorial table sat off to the side, Sarah's picture smiling at the assembled crowd. Jake walked over before the ceremony started, touched the frame gently. "She's incredible, Sarah. You'd love her. She's smart and kind, and she makes Lily laugh the way you used to. She doesn't try to be you. She's just completely herself, and somehow that's exactly what we needed. I hope you're okay with this. I hope you know I'll never forget you. But I'm choosing to keep living. I'm choosing to be happy. I think that's what you'd want." Sophie found him there, touched his arm. "It's time." The ceremony was everything it needed to be. The processional started. Lily walked down the aisle with solemn concentration, scattering petals with precision. She took her place at the front and beamed at Jake with pride. Then the music changed. Everyone stood. Natalie appeared on her father's arm. She wore a simple ivory dress, elegant and understated, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She carried a small bouquet of white roses. She looked terrified and happy and so beautiful, Jake forgot how to breathe. Their eyes met, held. Everything else faded away, just the two of them and the promise they were about to make, that they'd already been making every day for months, to show up, to choose each other, to build something that honored their pasts while embracing their future. The officiant welcomed everyone, spoke about second chances, about blended families, about love that heals instead of hiding scars. Then he invited Lily to speak. She stepped forward with her prepared words written on index cards. Her hands were shaking too much to read. So she spoke from memory instead. "I just want everyone to know that I'm the one who found Natalie first. I called her a princess and I was right. And I'm the luckiest girl in the world that she said yes to being my mom." She turned to Natalie. "I promise to be the best daughter ever, to listen even when I don't want to let you be part of our family forever. I love you so much." Natalie knelt down right there in front of everyone, pulled Lily into a tight hug. "I love you too, sweetheart. Being your mom is the greatest honor of my life." There wasn't a dry eye anywhere. Jake's vows came next. He'd written them over and over, practiced them until they felt right. But standing there looking at Natalie, the prepared words felt inadequate. So he spoke from his heart instead. "You walked into my life when I thought my heart was permanently closed. Lily called you a princess, and you've been ours ever since. I promise to choose you every single day, even on the hard days, even when life gets messy. I will always choose you. You taught me that endings can become beginnings, that my heart was big enough for both past and present. I love you, and I can't wait to spend forever showing you exactly how much." Natalie's vows were simpler, more direct. "You showed me that endings can turn into beginnings. That heartbreak can lead to the greatest love of your life. That family is built by the people who show up and stay. You and Lily saw me at my lowest, and you didn't just help me up. You invited me into your family. I choose you and Lily in this beautiful life we're creating together. I promise to be the best wife and mother I can be, to show up for every moment, to love you both with everything I have." The ring exchange, the officiant pronouncing them married, the kiss that sealed everything, the moment stretching and crystallizing into memory, the applause, the joy, the beginning of something that had already started months ago but was now official and binding and real. But they didn't walk down the aisle as a couple. They paused, looked at Lily. "Come here, sweetheart." Jake held out his hand. All three walked down the aisle together, Lily between them, holding both their hands. Their first steps as an official family. Guests stood and clapped and cried. Mrs. Patterson from the cafe was there sobbing into a tissue. Tom was grinning like an idiot. Sophie was recording everything on her phone. Natalie's parents looked happier than they had in years. The reception was chaos in the best way. Music and dancing and too much food and speeches that made everyone laugh and cry. Sophie's maid of honor speech about watching Jake survive the unsurvivable and come out believing in love. Tom's best man speech about being insufferable to work with when Jake was falling for Natalie and everyone could see it except him. Natalie's father gave a speech that broke everyone. When Derek left my daughter at the altar, I wanted to destroy him. But now I want to thank him. Because his cowardice led her here, to this man, to this family, to the life she deserves. Jake, you gave my daughter back her faith in love. You showed her what it means when someone truly shows up. We couldn't be happier to welcome you and Lily into our family. The first dance was all three of them. Not traditional, but nothing about this was traditional. They swayed together to 1,000 years while everyone watched. Lily standing on Jake's feet. Natalie's arms around both of them. A family officially formed. A promise kept. A beginning that felt like coming home. Later, after more dancing and cake and joy after the sparkler send-off and the drive to the hotel after Lily was safely at Sophie's for the weekend, Jake and Natalie collapsed onto the hotel bed still in their wedding clothes. Exhausted and happy and married. We did it. We actually did it. Natalie turned to face him. Her makeup smeared, her hair falling out of its careful styling. Still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. You know what the best part is? This isn't the ending. This is just the beginning. We get to wake up together tomorrow and the day after and build a life that's completely ours. Jake kissed her, soft and slow. Yeah, we get forever. And I'm planning to make every single day count. 1 year later, they stood in a courtroom. Judge presiding, lawyer present. Papers signed that made Lily officially Lily Morrison Ross. The adoption finalized. Natalie legally Lily's mother in every way that mattered. Now it's official. Now I really have 2 moms. The judge smiled. This is my favorite part of the job. Watching families choose each other. Congratulations to all of you. They celebrated with ice cream, because some traditions were sacred. Amy's ice cream on South Congress, the same place they'd gone after Lily's school play. Lily got her ridiculous flavor combination, Jake got vanilla, Natalie got dark chocolate with almonds. They sat outside in the spring sunshine and felt complete. A month after the adoption, Natalie discovered she was pregnant. She took the test 3 times because she couldn't quite believe it. Then she told Jake who picked her up and spun her around the kitchen, despite her laughing protests. Then they told Lily together who screamed so loud the neighbors probably heard. I'm going to be a big sister. This is the best day ever. The pregnancy was easy. Natalie worked through most of it, kept her job at Oak Ridge, continued her nurse practitioner program part-time. Jake hovered and worried and drove her crazy with his overprotectiveness. Lily talked to the baby bump constantly, told her future sibling about school and friends and the important things to know about being part of their family. Henry Morrison Ross was born on a Tuesday in March, 8 pounds, healthy lungs, a full head of dark hair like his mother. Lily was at the hospital within an hour of the birth. She'd been staying with Sophie but insisted on meeting her brother immediately. He's so tiny, I'm going to protect him forever. Natalie pulled Lily onto the hospital bed beside her. Careful of the IV and the monitors. You already are. You're the best big sister anyone could ask for. That night, Jake held his son and felt his world expand impossibly larger. He had his daughter who'd saved him, his wife who'd reminded him how to live, his son who represented the future they were building together, a family formed from loss and choice and the courage to try again. 2 years after the wedding, they returned to the Corner Cup Cafe for their anniversary breakfast. Now a family of 4. Lily, 11 years old, Henry, 2, and pure chaos. They sat at their table, the same table where everything started. Mrs. Patterson brought them coffee and juice and smiled at the family that had started in her cafe. I love this tradition, coming back to where it all began. Jake reached across the table for Natalie's hand. Best decision I ever made was letting Lily talk to a crying stranger. Best decision I ever made was coming to Austin, starting over. Being brave enough to accept help from a widower and his daughter who saw a sad princess and decided to do something about it. Lily was helping Henry color, teaching him how to stay in the lines, showing him the proper way to draw princesses. The scene was ordinary and perfect. This was their life. These small moments of joy and chaos and family. Then the bell above the door chimed. A woman walked in alone. She chose a table in the corner, the same corner where Natalie had sat 4 years ago. She pulled out her phone, looked at it. Her face crumpled. She was trying not to cry, trying to hold it together in public the way Natalie had, trying and failing. Lily noticed immediately, "Dad, that lady looks really sad." Natalie saw too, recognition in her eyes, remembering what it felt like to be that woman. "Should we say something?" Lily looked at both her parents, permission and courage in one glance. "Can I go talk to her?" "I think I should talk to her." They nodded, both of them. Jake and Natalie, who understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask someone if they're okay. That sometimes a simple question from a child can change 3 lives. That showing up for strangers is how you change the world one person at a time. Lily walked over with confidence that came from being loved completely. "Excuse me, are you okay?" Sometimes talking to someone helps when you're sad. The woman looked up surprised, mascara already streaking. "That's very sweet of you. I'm just having a rough morning." Lily's voice was gentle, matter of fact. "My mom was sitting in this exact cafe being sad 4 years ago. Then she met my dad. And now we're a family and she's happy. So things can get better even when they seem really bad." The woman's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Thank you. I really needed to hear that today." "You're welcome. I hope you find your happy ending too." Lily walked back to her family looking proud of herself. Natalie was crying happy tears. When did she get so wise? Jake pulled both his girls close, Henry squirming between them. She learned from the best. She learned from both her moms. The woman in the corner looked over at their family, saw the joy, saw the realness, saw proof that broken things could be made whole, that endings could turn into beginnings, that sometimes the worst moments of your life were actually doorways to the best ones if you were brave enough to walk through. They left the cafe as a family. Lily grabbed their hands. Jake and Natalie. Her parents who chose her, who loved her, who built a life that honored the past while embracing the future. Henry toddled between them, demanding to be picked up. The chaos of family spilling onto the Austin sidewalk. "Do you think that lady will be okay?" Natalie's voice was certain. "I think she will." Someone cared enough to notice she was hurting. That's how healing starts. That's how I started healing. Because an 8-year-old girl was brave enough to ask if I was okay. And because a widower was brave enough to let me in. Because both of you showed me what family really means. That it's built by people who show up, who stay, who choose each other even when it's hard. Jake looked at his wife, his daughter, his son, his family that had formed from grief and hope and the particular magic of being seen by the right people at the right time. This was everything. This ordinary moment on a Tuesday morning. This was what he'd fought for, what he'd risked his heart for, what Sarah would have wanted for him. Sometimes a little girl asks a simple question and changes the trajectory of 3 lives. Sometimes the saddest person in the cafe becomes your greatest blessing. And sometimes showing up is enough. Being brave enough to ask if someone's okay. Being brave enough to say yes when they ask if you want to try again. Being brave enough to believe that love doesn't run out. It expands. It makes room. It transforms loss into something that looks remarkably like joy.